You're listening to Infoverity's Trust Us podcast, where you can gear up for your data management journey with bite-sized discussions on industry trends and thought leadership. On each episode, we'll feature industry experts to help you navigate your path to mastering your enterprise data. Welcome to today's episode of the podcast. Today, we'll be talking about enterprise data management trends in the manufacturing and distribution industries. Joining us today is Rick Peters, the Director of Manufacturing Solutions at Infoverity. So a perfect guest for this topic. Thank you so much, Rick, for joining us. Would you be able to introduce yourself for the listeners?
Sure. Thank you, Jocelyn. Rick Peters, Director of Manufacturing Solutions here at Infoverity. Prior to my work in Infoverity, which has only been about 2 years, I've actually spent over 20 years in industrial manufacturing, where I held various roles in IT operations, commercial operations, and then data management roles. So my experience is predominantly in manufacturing, specifically industrial manufacturing, and not consulting. So this is, I think, a wonderful role that I've been able to share a lot of what I learned over the years. So thank you for having me.
We're lucky to have you and your expertise, especially for this topic. So thank you again for joining us. Let's start off by talking through some of the key manufacturing use cases for enterprise data management so that we can help our listeners kind of orient themselves in the space of what are we really talking about when we talk about the intersection of enterprise data management and manufacturing.
Sure. And I think it's really important to understand a lot of manufacturing is in a very saturated space. So meaning that your organic growth is going to be 3 to 5% year over year. So how manufacturers tend to grow is by acquisition. They essentially buy the market share. Now, obviously, if you have a new product launch or that is very specific and niche and new to the market, you may have larger growth strategies organically, but for the most part, it's in a lot of manufacturing in space is very saturated. So that being said, the primary use cases are really of how do we address these companies and organizations that acquire lots of businesses, but never bring them into their fold. So like very highly siloed data sources or mini ERPs. Maybe I work for a company at 119 PLMs, 3 or 4 PLMs in an organization, lots of CRM. So how do these organizations take all these different silos of data and bring it together? So really use case number one is the centralization, the activity of doing that across primarily, especially manufacturing, product, customer, and now an increased focus on supplier. The other thing is that we notice in manufacturing, especially ones that grow via acquisition, is that data accessibility from the shop floor employee all the way out to the C-suite doesn't exist, right? Even on a best day, there's somebody in an office trying to pull 45 data sources together to get any kind of accurate information to employees or a C-suite executive. So data accessibility is really important for the organizations because they're moving from a time when the plant would just make decisions, sales would make decisions, to very highly data-driven decision making and moving forward. And then I think that the other big one is really how do they support these enterprise applications? As a lot of organizations that are operating outside of a holding company, they want to start leveraging standardized systems to drive costs down, to increase standard process across their organization. How do they do that? They need a centralized data model, centralized data across all these different platforms and reliable data that can support those. So those are probably, if I had to stack rank things, 3 of the most primary focus of a lot of our manufacturing organizations.
I think that that's really great insight. And coming from the manufacturing industry myself, I think that certainly resonates with me. Just how do you integrate new companies into really a lot older companies that have very set ways of doing things and that are typically using pretty old or antiquated systems to do a lot of that? How do you modernize them along with the business that they're trying to run?
Exactly. Modernization is probably, when you take 4 or 5 legacy systems out, one, you're driving costs, obviously, from your infrastructure perspective, and you're driving that cost out of the organization. You're bringing in a new application as feature rich and can really support your business long term. But how do you do that? It takes a significant amount of time, a significant amount of change, but it all starts with your data, really. Ultimately, trying to get that all that information in one place to even enable an application like that is probably the longest pole in the tent by far, and one of the more challenging things to do. Anybody can stand up an application. Not everybody can get the data in the application in a format and consistency that they need to actually execute and leverage the application long term. So this really goes back to data management. How do we start with build our foundation as we're starting to modernize our organization and the footprint for these large organizations?
That's right. So that's table stakes. In the manufacturing space, what do you think some industry trends are related to enterprise data management? What would you say the top 3 trends are that you hear?
So you'll hear a lot, especially in manufacturing, industry 4.0. A lot sometimes you hear plant 4.0, or really where you're bringing integration of technology in with your plant processes and your operational processes in your organization. So if you look understanding your line, what are your critical failure points, looking at predictive diagnostics to indicate something that's going to happen before it happens. Understanding demand and production dependencies along with their supply chain, especially when you have a decentralized organization, very challenging. So this also supports that process. And Industry 4.0 does I guess an afterthought of what it also does is, from the front end in the sales support and marketing side, a lot of times there's challenges of even saying, hey, I have a assembly it takes a 52 weeks build time. Where is it in the manufacturing process? By adding all this integration technology, not only can we, enable predictive diagnostics and understanding our dependencies on demand, but we can also start looking and communicating to the customer of where they are within that manufacturing process. If there's a delay to get that out, how can we, so it's much, much broader than just operations, and it's starting to expand across all of both the operational side, but also the commercial side of the businesses as well. I think the other two that are obviously that we're hearing a lot of is AI. Yeah, build that foundation. Manufacturers want to understand how they can use it, not only within their operations, but how they use it in their products, right? What can they provide as a value add to their customer base that differentiates them across a very highly saturated market? Those are things that they're always kind of trying to be bleeding, cutting edge if they can be. Data is foundational to AI. So depending on where you are in the maturity, it's whether or not you can leverage that. And then finally, I think, with the introduction of COVID and the understanding of a lot of the supply chain management issues that can arise, it has created a renewed focus on how they manage their supply chain. And that is much more than just dual sourcing or tri-sourcing, but it's also looking at things that may be an indication that will impact their supply chain. A good example will be weather, right? If I have a plant that was hit by a tsunami because it's on the coast, or if I had a freeze in Texas and it brings down a plant, how do I support that? So it's about that supplier diversity. Tariffs. If a country puts 100% tariffs on a product that I'm pulling out of a country, I need to shift my supply chain to a different country that has a better cost basis. How do I do that? Understanding that diversity is really where they're trying to make it to the next level and really driving supplier management across the organization.
That's great insight as well. And, I think it can be a really daunting place to start when you're considering not only that you have to really modernize what you're doing, but then also factor in what else you can build on top of that foundation, right? With things like AI, with things like supply chain management. So, my next question that I think our listeners would be interested in is how should you get started on your journey, right? Um, where should you be making your first investments in enterprise data management if all of this sounds a little bit overwhelming to you?
Well, I think the answer is always just start. But if you're looking to invest in an application or a suite of applications to support your organization, it really is based on the maturity where you're at. If you're an organization that's in its infancy, you know, focusing on building that foundation is critical. What that foundation looks like, MDM especially across a very highly siloed organization with a robust application footprint. MDM is probably your first step. And grow. Don't try to start too much, because I know organizations, they go out and try to hit a home run. The reality is they fail. All you need to do is get to first base, get a hit, consolidate that data, Then we can step back and focus on data quality and start driving those operational efficiencies through the organization. Um, if MDM is too big, then maybe you step back and you look at data quality and specifically a system or a process. We need to, as an organization, we always need to just be moving forward, not talking about moving forward, because that reality is if you haven't started a data management program today, you are years behind your competitors. And if you keep on waiting, it's going to be decades behind your competitors. So it's very, very important just to understand that and really just to start moving forward.
You haven't started, it's too late. But also it's not. I think what I'm hearing you say as well is it can depend upon what your business goals are. It's really important to make progress no matter what, but you also have to balance that with what your goals are as an organization, which will shift and change over time as you become more mature.
Absolutely. I mean, everything should be aligned to a strategic goal of what your organization, and that is any initiative, let alone data management. But what you'll find is that your data management program will align to just about every strategic initiative across your organization. It's understanding that and socializing that understanding across your organization that really starts driving that support for data long term.
That's right. And, to that end, I think it can also be hard to figure out exactly what you can be doing while you wait to secure some of the investments that you know you need to make, right? So you want to get started, you want to get started as quickly as possible. It can take time to get the enterprise funding that you need in order to make the investments that you know are needed for the long term. Can you talk to our listeners a little bit about what they can even start doing today to get going on their enterprise data management journey?
Absolutely. I think it's just start. How do you start? It could be a simple creation process for a customer setup. Taking a look at that. Why are you having bad data being entered? Is it because you have this long tail of people that have access to create customers within your ERP? Well, then possibly just slashing access to people that don't need it. Looking at lists or fields that are important to your organization. Are they a list of values? Start standardizing that data, create a list of value. Or it's simply just creating dashboards to start understanding your most key and important attributes or data points through your organization, just to understand the data quality. Any organization, most organizations have Power BI or something similar to that, and they have access to or getting more access to data. Use it. The one thing I would say is that the more visibility you put into your data, showing that it's either not accurate or you have a bad process, the easier it will be to socialize that data, that data management program, which is the next thing to do. Starting from day one, you need to socialize, socialize, socialize. From the folks that are interacting within a process all the way up to your C-suite, data literacy and data management and the understanding that through your organization is paramount to success. Um, the one thing you don't want to do is have an IT-driven data program dropped on the business or your C-suite and say, this is why we need it, and nobody understands why. That socialization should start from day one and never end and continue to drive that data literacy across your organization. That will drive data quality and also obviously completeness and start people buy in and get to understand that. So just start, but start in the smallest thing, the largest thing, it doesn't matter, just move forward.
What I'm hearing you say, I think, is that there's a lot of value in understanding what your current pain points are and the current state of your data. And this serves not only the purpose of trying to figure out which problem you're going to solve first, but also as building a business case for how you get enterprise buy-in from both an IT and a business perspective to actually get this program off the ground.
Yes, but I think what you'll find, and so I think that the challenge here is that a lot of times data management programs are started from a function up. I had the opportunity to start from a marketing function to drive a new solution, ultimately ended up in product MDM, and then that went enterprise wide. So a lot of times understanding just your pain points may not people may not understand how that the impacts on them because you're looking at maybe a marketing function or a sales reporting function. So I would say understanding your pain points is great, is absolutely necessary. But it's also how do we apply some of those pain points across the larger businesses? And then socialize that as well. It's gonna it's gonna start small and it'll always grow. But again, it's just about if you understand that your customer creation process is 50% accurate, it's costing you X amount of dollars annually just because of a bad address. Those are things that we can get hard metrics on. We can understand that. We can start fixing that process today. We can start socializing why we're fixing that process. And then ultimately that solution is socialize that solution across the organization.
Sounds to me like there's a lot of change management wrapped up in this too, which is a common theme that we've heard on different episodes of the podcast as well. So my
Change man.
final,
Oh,
oh,
can I just address the change man? Absolutely
please.
the hardest thing of the program, um, especially in manufacturing organizations where you have large amounts of an engineering community. Uh, Change is not always welcomed. Or that you have a plant or a process that has been working and operating independently of the rest of the organization for a long period of time. So that socialization data literacy helps with the change management, but I would not underestimate the amount of work it would take for peer change management to change those processes to really improve your data management capability.
So certainly, like we discussed, right? Socializing, data literacy, data management, all paramount to success, but don't lose sight of getting started with how you want to approach your change management. And it can
For
never
sure.
be too early to be thinking about that is what I think I'm hearing.
For sure. Yeah, agreed.
Thank you for that. Final question for you is, okay, sounds like an overwhelming amount of work that any organization could be tasked with in the space of enterprise data management. And I know that there's a number of different ways that Infoverity can help break this down into manageable pieces for our listeners who are needing some help. Can you talk about some of the specific ways that Infoverity can help our listeners on this journey?
Yeah, I think it's good to know that one is that Infoverity, we're a complete end-to-end data management company, right? We focus on nothing but data management. And we really need to understand where an organization is in their data maturity. If they are in the infancy, we go help our customers understand their problems. We help them build a data strategy. We help them build a tactical roadmap, not just a strategy and say this is what you need to do, but we show you how to do it step by step across the organization and start building that program accordingly. Additionally, we talk about data governance, right? It's something that we didn't address throughout today, but we talked around it. But data governance is going to be the cornerstone to any data management program. So we often help organizations just trying to get their arms around data governance. What is the operating model and what your business and IT organizations are going to operate by? What are the tools that can help support a data governance program within your organization? And then where do I start? How do you start? And where do you focus? For more mature organizations, it could be as simple as just implementing solutions, right? And bringing best practices from other manufacturing companies that we have seen and applying those to your organization. That can be anything from MDM to a data lake to implementing AI in your organization for a very specific use case. And then finally, I think one of our biggest value adds is once we set this up and you're down the path of in your maturity, you're slowly growing your maturity, we can help support your organization long term, right? We can manage those applications. We can help, provide expertise through your data journey, and we'll always be there, right, as a partner as we grow, as your organization grows. So it's really, we could do it end to end, but I think it's really understanding where your organization sits today in maturity and where we could best implement or impact your program accordingly. So I think that's one of the value adds that you'll notice that from Infoverity is that the partnership with an organization and as you grow, we grow is probably the one of the biggest differentiators you'll find amongst a lot of other SIs out there.
I think certainly the depth of expertise in both enterprise data management and everything that comes with that, and then also just within industries themselves, like yourself with expertise in manufacturing industry. So it's not just about what do you do, um, with data governance, right? It's how do you specifically apply data governance principles within common manufacturing use cases, right? And I
Absolutely.
think that that's really valuable. And as a former client of Infoverity, that was something that I experienced as well. It was just a different perspective that was being brought to the table. And one of the things that you mentioned at the beginning of that answer was helping our listeners, our customers, complete a strategy. And I would add to that, making that strategy really actionable. I think any consultancy can really create a strategy for you, but making that actionable, breaking that down into actionable next steps, I think is a real differentiator that you hit on too. Well, this has been an excellent discussion. I'd like to summarize it to make sure that I got everything right, and then I'll ask as well if there's anything we didn't cover that you'd like to. So what I heard is some of the key use cases within the manufacturing industry really all go back to a foundation of data to enable modernization of these organizations. So specifically themes like centralization of data, whether that be products, customers, or suppliers, is key. Data accessibility and making sure that that's not limited, and then really support for enterprise applications. So those are some trends that, sorry, those are some common use cases that we hear of when we talk about the manufacturing industry. Some trends in this space are Industry 4.0, AI, supply chain management. Really, there's a common theme of leveraging technology to transform all of the areas of the business, not just your operations, but just really how you approach running your business holistically, leveraging the technology that's at your fingertips. If our listeners don't know exactly where to get started in the mix of all of these different use cases and all of these different trends, the most important thing is just to get started, period. And really, what your investment looks like is going to be based on the maturity of the organization. As you get started on your journey, some of the most important things that you can focus on are socializing what you are seeing relative to data literacy and data management within your organization. And there's no such thing as getting started too early with your organizational change management, especially within engineering organizations. And there are plenty of ways that Infoverity can help with this, but what you're going to get when you come to Infoverity is a complete end-to-end solution relative to all of your enterprise data management needs. Whether that be an implementation of a tool, the creation of a strategy, support for what you're trying to do with data governance, or just helping your operation run. But what you're going to get is something that's tailored to your needs based on not only our depth of expertise in the subject matter itself, but also within each of the industries we support, such as manufacturing. Would you say that that's pretty accurate?
I would. And I guess, you said one other thing that we should make sure the listeners understand is that your data may be a mess. It's not unique to your company. It's every organization has a lot of skeletons and a lot of sins of the past. Um, I mean, even the most advanced, structured companies with the best technology in place have a lot of data management process issues, right? So don't be just say, well, my organization's different, or oh, we're so bad we can't get started, or anything of that nature. Just keep in mind that you are just like your peers are, and you may be in a different phase of your maturity, but it's not something we haven't seen, or it's not present in the industry today. So just keep that in mind as you start that initiative, and I'm not to be scared of your organization's skeletons in a closet, if you will. So
We're not alone. That's
we're
all.
not alone.
That's a great parting message. I love it. Rick, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your insights, and I'm sure our listeners will as well. Thank you again.
Yes, thank you for having me.
For more than a decade, Infoverity has been established as an industry-leading consultancy specializing in solving enterprise data management business problems with best-in-class technical solutions. Our firm has consultants located around the globe with headquarters in Columbus, Ohio and Valencia, Spain. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you, please visit our website at infoverity.com. We've also included additional contact information in the show notes.